Robert F. Kennedy officially gets his name into the ring for the White House. So we'll talk about his initial campaign, where he is going with the Orange Man, and what weight is already weighing down on his ability to get into the race. So a lot to go over with that, and that's just a few articles that we're going to be focusing a lot on. In other news, McCarthy has unveiled his debt ceiling bill that targets the Biden agenda, and Politico already coming out to say that the White House can totally kick the Republicans' asses on the debt ceiling because, well, they've got a captive media, so they can pretty much do whatever they want. But we'll talk about that and what's happening there and what that means. Matt Walsh is hacked. His account is out, and a hacker comes out and says he just did it because he was bored and wanted to stir up trouble. So we'll go over some of that and what's going on there and what happens with that. And Montana passes an anti-child trans bill, and yet the worst crime in the world is the fact that during a censure of their transgender House member, they misgendered her, all 21 of them. It is going to be all this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am J. Edgar, and this is Contemporary. What a mess. Today's been just a mess. Like, it started off really easy, and then we just got slammed at work at the very end, and I wound up getting out of work a little bit late here, and then we have a massive trove of news for the day on top of everything. So getting that done, organized, ready to go, and put into an order that actually makes some kind of sense to give you guys the best possible program, because of course I always want to have my listeners have the best possible episode of Contemporary we can possibly get them. But then on top of that, like, Rumble was fighting me the whole time. Like, when I was trying to get everything set up and ready to go, it was just a constant fight left and right. Like, oh well, hey, now you're uploading a video, which, by the way, my intro video, which is, for Rumble, when you set up Rumble, you actually have to put up a 24-second video. It's got to be at least 24 seconds. It can be up to a minute and a half, where you just put up an intro, a space holder video when you set everything up live. Well, yeah, that's now uploaded as an upload on my channel somewhere. I don't know how that happened, because I was setting up for Go Live, and yet somehow we were on the video upload. It's new technology, and it's something that I am new with as well, so that fought me the rest of the way. And, well, we've got a lot to go over here. So we started 15 minutes late. We're going to end 15 minutes late, and we will talk about something that I am thankful for. So definitely going to be some time for that, and we've got a lot to do over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, and Overruled with KTZed, as we bring you a better news and culture experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. For too long, we've all got our news and our culture from people who wear shoes and suits that cost more than our houses, and that's just not the way to get your information. I'm sorry, and I'm sure that some of these people are great people. We'll be talking about the Dominion lawsuit a little bit. Not so much what actually happened with that, because, I mean, anybody could have seen that coming from a mile away. But the reaction of that, and Fox News had to pay out almost $1 billion, and that wasn't good enough for leftoid little kitties like Victor Shi and Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant. So we've got that to go over here, and, well, again, a lot of people like Tucker. I don't particularly like Tucker. I don't particularly like Fox News. I don't particularly like OANN or anything else, because These are all people who are trying to take advantage of your emotion, whereas you can sit down and get your news and your culture and your music, your religion, your video games, and even your true crime podcasts from people who are just like you, some of whom had to make some of the same decisions that you have. So go check out all that great programming. It is going to be a great time. Let's get down into our finance and get started on the day. Let's get the live chat up here. The Mogwai is over on the one side. I do like the fact that we get some Twitch audience here every once in a while. Yeah, go check out Twitch if you're not over there. JEdgar101. DLive if you've not gone over there. Ed's blog, Twitter. You can go check out Rumble. That's also JEdgar101. You can go check out that channel, Odyssey. We're streaming in a lot of places, and there is more to come. All right, let's get started. On the Dow. The Dow is down today. The Dow spent almost the entire day down. Not just almost the entire day down. From the futures dumping off the beginning all the way down to the end where it tried to claw back at the very last second. We ended the day at 33,897.01. That is down 79.62, or about 0.25% on the day. A few things weighing on that. Looking in at your Bitcoin, that is also down on the day, dropping $1,266 and 60 US cents, 4% down on the Bitcoin to 29,113.10, and that is about that's actually still overnight last night because of the time difference off of this, but there was a major drop off, and it just kind of stayed steady after that, still declining but steady after the major drop off overnight. Looking in at the gas prices around the Madison area, we see 340s on the east side. We see 350s on the west side, unchanged from yesterday. So we've at least got some consistency with that. I do hope some of you guys went off and topped off before this went up any further, because I do anticipate we're going to still see an up. And we're going to look in our finance article for the day. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Futures, Tesla falls as gross margins free cash flow dive. At Carson, reporting, Dow Jones Futures fell slightly after hours along with the S&P and the NASDAQ Futures. Tesla declined solidly late Wednesday as earnings fell solidly on big price cuts, with gross margins and free cash flow tumbling far more than expected. Lam Research, Las Vegas Sands also reported Wednesday night, with LRCX rising slightly in LVS, signaling a breakout. Taiwan Semiconductor, DR Horton, and several financials are due early Thursday. You're not a fan of Tucker. I go the way the wind blows in the Republican Party, Carlson. I don't think Tucker is that. I don't like Tucker for other reasons, but that's pretty much how I feel about I felt that way about Rush, but he was still alive. I felt that way about Hannity. Hannity's a big one that's like that. And I think everybody knows that about Sean Hannity. Hannity will kneel down in front of whichever Republican is the most powerful. And he won't even lie about it. Like, he is open about that fact. The market rally remained quiet on the surface Wednesday, with the major indices narrowly mixed. That's despite hardware, tech stocks slumping on IT spending concerns, while Netflix retreated on disappointing subscriber growth. Megacap techs held up well. Apple rose 0.7 to 167.63, hitting an 8-month high. Apple cleared a 3-week tight entry of 166.94. Microsoft added a few cents, still in a buy zone, and Google parent Alphabet edged lower, just below a buy point. Amazon rose nearly 2% in a 2-month high, but still below the 200-day line. Meta Platforms fell 1%, but still near 11-month highs. Meta is on the IBD leaderboard and swing trader. Microsoft is on the IBD long-term leaders. LRCX is on the IBD Big Cap 20. On the futures, Dow Futures gave up more, falling 0.1 versus fair value. The S&P dipped 0.2, and the NASDAQ fell 0.3. Tesla is a major S&P and NASDAQ 100 component. Remember, overnight action in Dow Futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, that is where we are at for our finance. Another round of layoffs coming from the Orlando Sentinel. Disney, still in the news yet again. Disney to unleash round 2 of 7,000 total layoffs Monday, report says. About 15% of the Walt Disney Company's entertainment staff could be cut next week, as the company begins a second round of layoffs in the effort to slash 7,000 jobs company-wide, according to a Bloomberg report. People with knowledge of Disney's plan told Bloomberg an unspecified thousands of jobs in Disney, TV, film, theme park, and corporate divisions are slated to be cut. Disney will reportedly begin notifying affected workers on April 24th. An unknown number of ESPN employees are included in the layoffs, CNBC reported. Ha 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 ha. You thought being a part of Disney would save you. Quoting unnamed Disney employees because it's always unnamed, Deadline wrote that anxieties are high within the company's various divisions as workers wait to see if their jobs are impacted. If you're not operating a ride at the parks, you could be on the chopping block, an unspecified longtime film executive told the publication. It remains unclear how many employees in Florida could lose their jobs in this next of 3 total planned waves of layoffs. Records show Disney has not filed any mass layoff notices with the state as of Wednesday. Federal law requires companies to file these notices 60 days in advance of layoffs affecting 50 or more employees. So, we don't know who it's all going to be. The state doesn't even know at this point, so I wonder too with the special governing district if they can skirt around that law, or because that's a state law, but we'll see what happens with that and where we go. All right. Typically, if there's a natural or even a man-made disaster, before we get into the main news of the day, for people who are new, because I'm transmitting on 3 new platforms at this point, at the top of the show, before I get into the main news, if there is any sort of disaster, we put that up at the top. So we did have a bit of issue in New York today. Parking garage collapses in New York City, killing 1 person and injuring several others. NBC News reporting. Doha Madani reports a parking garage collapsed in New York City's financial district on Tuesday afternoon, killing 1 person and injuring other people. Firefighters responded but pulled rescuers out because of concerns about the building's structural stability, the New York Fire Department said. 1 employee of the garage was killed and 5 other employees were injured, one of whom refused medical attention, said James Esposito, the fire department's chief of operations. Mayor Adams said 1 person was found dead after first responders arrived. We had firefighters inside the building conducting searches. The building was continuing to collapse, Esposito said at a news conference, calling the operations extremely dangerous. The workers inside the building were doing parking garage operations at the time of the collapse, Esposito said. And it looks like we might have video of this, so let's pop this open. So this is the rescue operations afterwards. And luckily enough, too, they didn't seem to waste any time on this. Like, they got there right away. Thankfully. I do fear that this could have been much, much worse. A worker was trapped in the upper floors of the building and called for help. Esposito said firefighters assisted him across the roof to another building to safety. Officials believe that everyone in the 4-story building has been accounted for, but the fire department will continue to conduct searches to confirm. Authorities used a robotic dog with a camera to stream video from within the building as conditions were too unstable for first responders to go inside. Boy, that makes you never want to go and park in a parking garage again. Records show the building had an 03 violation for a crack in the first floor ceiling slab. A hearing was set in 04 for the hazardous condition, but the status remained in violation. Another violation in 09 reported the fire stairs were broken and defective, and that there was a loose piece of concrete in danger of falling. A hearing was scheduled in 2010, but the records show there was no compliance recorded for this violation. Police asked people to avoid the area near Ann Street between Nassau and William Street at 4:42 p.m. because of structural collapse. Images and video shared on social media showed multiple vehicles that had parked on the roof crashed into the floor below. So, There are a few things that are going off this. Now, number one, this building appears to have been unstable, and unstable for a very long time. Now, one of the questions that we have going into this is the obvious question of how and why did this stay in operation even when condemned and no record of compliance? And I'm not going to come back out and blame anybody for this because, I mean, the dust hasn't even settled yet on this building. I suspect that there may be some collusion between government officials who got their palms greased and the owners of the building, but until the dust settles, until the investigation is done, I don't want to go too far into that because, again, one person died, thankfully. And that's, again, in a parking garage situation in a crowded place like this could have been a lot worse. This could have been absolutely terrible, but it does look like this, and I mean, this goes back to, what was the tower in Miami, where, again, we were sitting, the condo building in Miami, where there were several violations recorded for this place, and it just seems like they kept getting ignored. Like, they recorded there was a violation, but then they never did anything about it. This does appear on the surface to be the same kind of situation, so we've got that, and thankfully, again, it was only one person, and not hundreds, if not dozens, thousands of people trapped in cars. And a little bit more lighthearted, but, the poor baby still has to be exposed to the government. From CNN, Tiny Troubles. Toddler infiltrates White House grounds. From Arlette Sains. A tiny intruder infiltrated the White House grounds Tuesday, prompting a swift response from the U.S. Secret Service. Anthony Guglielmi, Chief of Communications for the Secret Service, said a toddler crawled through the fence of the north side of the White House, setting off security alerts. The Secret Service Uniform Division today encountered a curious young visitor along the White House north fence line who briefly entered the White House grounds, Emily said. The White House security systems instantly triggered Secret Service officers, and the toddler and parents were quickly reunited. It's not the first time a toddler has crawled through the White House fence. There was a similar incident in 2014 when a toddler squeezed through the White House fence just before then President Barack Hussein O was about to address the nation on Iraq. The breach prompted a temporary lockdown and delayed the briefing. We were going to wait until he learned to talk to question him, but in lieu of that, he got a timeout and was sent on way with parents. Edwin Donovan, then a spokesperson for the U.S. Secret Service, said, "That is cringe beyond cringe." And of course, this was that was at the time when Barack Hussein O was still president. So, as far as today goes, I mean, the details are there are very large gaps in this fence. Now, you and I probably can't get through there, but a toddler, it's probably not that difficult. So, the perimeter alarm is off, the toddler is in, the toddler's reunited with parents, and, like most of us, had a very, very traumatic experience with the federal government. Alright, one more thing I want to do before we talk RFK. And this one is, I just want to have a little bit of fun with our friends over on the left who don't think, for whatever reason, that $787 million is punishment enough for Fox News, which, I mean, it's not. They're the opposition. I don't understand these people. Well, I do understand these people, to an extent, because they've been spoon-fed, and I don't, whether or not they even believe it, is beside the point. They have been given money, exclusive White House access, tours, promotions, and a host of other things to come back out and tell you that Fox News is bad, in spite of the fact that Fox News is controlled opposition. I'm glad they had to pay out that money. I hope they take it out of Tucker Carlson's paycheck. But of course, it wasn't enough for our friends over on the left who got their way, by the way. They got sued and settled for an exorbitant sum of money. But see, people like Charlotte Clymer and Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant, and people like that wanted to see a big, messy trial out of this. They wanted to have Tucker Carlson forced out in handcuffs onto the floor They wanted to see him forced out for that. Caleb Schumott joining us over on Instagram. They wanted to see Maria Bartiromo forced to take an oath and see if they could get her in a perjury trap. And, well, Fox News avoided that. They wanted Dominion to hardball and say, no, we're taking this all the way to trial. And I think a lot of them are more angry with Dominion right now for not forcing this back out in a trial. But there are a couple other avenues to that. Number one, Fox probably had a good reasoning and a good slate of evidence to show that there were enough people in the protected media who said the same thing about Dominion after the Trump election. I'm sure that they were coming with receipts for that, and Dominion just looked up and said, we can't get entangled with that because, the next thing we know is we're going to see demands to go back and sue these companies. So let's just settle, let's get this out of court and let's be done. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the other ones, lawsuits dropping because, the rest of these people are like, oh, we got Fox News for $787 million. Next is OAN, and next is, what's the other big one? Not One American News, Zero American News, I call them. Newsmax. Next is Newsmax. We're going to get Newsmax taken down too. But I want to share some of the languishing reactions of the people who were disappointed by the fact that they didn't get to go see Tucker Carlson squealing and subpoenaed and carried in, kicking and screaming, and forced to testify. Charlotte Clymer first coming in and saying, Dominion took an easy payday instead of standing on principle. Fox will not have to air an apology or admission of their fraudulent claims about the 2020 election. Fox gets to put this behind them. Dominion gets a settlement 10 times their worth. How nice to be rich and carefree. If your company presents itself as a solution to safeguarding democracy and preserving free and fair elections, which is preserving our hegemony, never ever let these people hide from the fact that when they say our democracy, they mean our hegemony. With your technology, you have a solemn obligation to counteract bad faith actors who claim your tech compromises elections, period. One of the Yashar Ali coming back out and saying, not defending Dominion, but given that they're a private company owned by a private equity firm with investors, there was no other choice. The PE firm has a fiduciary obligation to obtain the best monetary outcome. Otherwise, they would be making firm vulnerable to lawsuits. Which Clymer comes back out and says, so Fox just gets away with it? That's cool. Great moment of democracy. Everyone, let's do this again. Which we will, and pretend today is a victory. Sounds awesome. Why are you reading a post from someone with the blue and yellow flag? I'm making fun of them. See, you missed just the start of this segment here where I told you that we're making fun of these people who didn't think that any of this went far enough. And this is noted leftoid and trans activist Charlotte Clymer, who's crying because, well, Dominion and Fox are in the same bed, but the evil Tucker Carlson network didn't have to pay any more. Favorite to make fun of on this program, Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant. Good morning and happy Wednesday to everyone who's disappointed that Dominion didn't hold Fox News' feet to the fire and force them to publicly apologize and admit to their viewers the damage they've done with their lies. Not gonna lie, I'm salty about this. We spent the last several months learning about the text messages proving they all knew when this trial was going to be the official proof of that malfeasance. Until Dominion folded like laundry. Yeah, cope and see it more, Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant. Go pay your child support. At the end of the day, they're a corporation. Corporations are not our friends. Unless they're the defenders of free and fair elections, then these guys are going to be all about Dominion again. Come 2024, by the way. They're going to be all about Dominion because Evil Orange Man is going to be against them. It's a small consolation that others at Fox will be sued by Dominion, as well as other parties like Smartmatic and individual shareholders, but if we want to push for accountability, we can't count on them for anything. It's up to us. What are you going to do? Jersey, my wife's son reliant. Is this a call for terrorism? Are you telling your followers to go do something to Fox News? Because I'm pretty sure that's against Twitter TOS. The last one that we're going to make fun of before we go into the RFK story. The new one that they're trying to force down our throats on Twitter. Victor Shi, the youngest Biden delegate. What the actual fuck? Judge just announced Dominion has settled its case. We don't get to see a messy trial. And the case has been resolved. This was a terrible decision by Dominion to settle, both for our justice and for our democracy. Translation, our hegemony. God damn it! Well, that's good then. That's good. I have not covered that story yet. Last night it was too new and I didn't know enough about it to get into it. And then today we were just too loaded to add that one onto there. So I'm sure we'll put that on the top tomorrow. All right, let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has officially, as of today, announced. In fact, he is going on the Orange Man Bad platform. From 7 News Boston, previous to the announcement, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. set to announce presidential campaign in Boston, but can't count on family support because they're all in the tank for Biden. From CNN, 7 News WHDH, and Juliana Mazza. The Kennedys have been through a lot. They don't want to go through this. No name has appeared on more ballots or lawn signs, even in the opposition. So, a little side note to this. I was, and still am, a big fan of stand-up comedy, and one of my favorite stand-ups was Dennis Leary. I remember the roast of Dennis Leary, which I have on DVD. We watched that in the Discord one night too, by the way. A few people joined me in for that. But we watched the DVD of the Dennis Leary roast. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Dennis Leary roast. It's from 2004. But when he was telling stories about his friends, he was telling one particular about his friend Lenny Bruce, who ran for mayor of Cambridge in 1979. And in the midst of it, he stole a bus and started driving around, picking people up at the bus stops, and instead of taking them to the next closest bus stop, taking them to their front doors in a stolen city bus. But the crux of his campaign, it's funny when we talk about Robert F. Kennedy at this right now, because they actually printed, and I lived in Boston for a couple years, and I know, like, my ex's parents were obviously around in the 70s. His platform was, fuck the Kennedys. And they had pins and stickers and bumper stickers and shit made up that said, fuck the Kennedys, vote for Lenny. So yes, I mean, this is actually true. No name in Massachusetts has ever appeared on more lawn signs. That's a funny side note to that. Fuck the Kennedys, vote for Lenny. Even across branches of the family that have grown distant and divided since the first generation rose to power in the 60s. They celebrate each cousin's achievement, whether that's a seat in the House or a new children's book or an expansion of the Special Olympics. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign challenging President Brandon for the Democratic nomination, set to be announced Wednesday in Boston, is too much for a family that defined the modern Democratic Party. They're frustrated, sad, and completely opposed. Now, see, that's where you're wrong, NBC Boston, and I understand what you're doing with this, but no, the Kennedys have not defined the modern Democrat Party. In fact, what John Fitzgerald Kennedy said about personal responsibility in the 60s flies completely in the face of what the modern Democrat Party is doing. You know the line. You've heard it if you've ever listened to the No Gimmicks podcast with Brady Leonard. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Which is weird because the modern Democrat Party is ask and demand what your country can do for you. I don't know a lot about John F. Kennedy's presidency. I know my mom does. My mom is huge into the JFK presidency and the Kennedy family in and of itself. The conspiracies, the art forms, and just everything else that they've done since John was shot. She would probably know more about the platform and everything else, but just that one line, I admire that line out of John F. Kennedy. They say they love him. They use words like heartbroken and tragic. It's a campaign. The vaccine skepticism, which includes a book about the real Anthony Fauci and saying Anne Frank. I'm going to be leery about that sentence because we're on YouTube. That'll be the part that Jared Holt takes out of context. It's insisting that Sirhan didn't actually shoot Kennedy's father, or breaking with many in the family years ago to argue that the assassin's parole, now it's going up against the president whose admin is stocked with Kennedys in prominent positions and who has decades of personal and emotional connections to multiple members of the family. They see the very namesake of one of the original brothers trying to leverage the most storied family legacy in Democratic politics for what many of them have been saying privately is a vanity run that is doomed, and they want to be doomed. So, they're not in the tank for him, but he has officially announced No, I'm not gay. I was making fun of Arvolt, who was talking about, and Arvolt, friend of the show, Arvolt, put up a meme, and it showed all the social media, the different social medias out there, and next to all of them, it said, "Taught me to be gay," and down at the bottom was Instagram, and I commented back to him, and I said, man, if you've seen all the e-thoughts that I follow on Instagram, I think Instagram has done nothing but prove that I'm straight, honestly. Men don't get hips like I like to see. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. formally announces bid for president, from Catherine Watson. Anti-vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of the late President John F. Kennedy and son of former U.S. Attorney General and slain 68 presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Sr., announced his long-shot bid. And, I mean, we're going to be going through a few other articles about this, not really reading into them, but seeing the media already weighing on this one. The long-shot campaign, the vanity bid, the bid he can never win. In a speech in Boston, Kennedy stressed his 30 years as an environmental lawyer and said the country is living in a toxic polarization. But he notably did not mention his own anti-vaccine views or group, the Children's Health Defense, which researchers have found is among the most influential spreaders of anti-vaccine misinformation. Facebook and Instagram have both removed the group's accounts for spreading misinformation. Members of the famously tight-knit Kennedy family have spoken out against his anti-vaccine advocacy, and he joked Wednesday that they were not in attendance. But a large part of his speech was spent blasting the response to the pinko pox pandemic, and specifically lockdowns, calling them the biggest transfer of wealth in the country, which is true, by the way, and claiming they did not work. He blamed former President Trump for caving to bureaucracy. There was more to it than that. And yeah, no, Trump was not blameless, I will give you that, but that's a part of the things to do, and why I titled this the way that I did. Now, it would be political suicide for Kennedy to go after Cuomo, Whitmer, Lightfoot, Newsom, and the lockdown are politicians who had the most stringent lockdowns out there, that would be political suicide. He would be done at that point. But he can, and we'll listen to that part of the speech, jump right up and get into the Orange Man Bad Olympics, as I mentioned. That's the title of the show here today. And actually have a little bit of a leg to stand on to do so. Because, yes, the Donald was advocating for lockdowns at the beginning. Now, his political adversaries took it much further and ran with it, but yeah, he was advocating for him at the beginning. Which a lot of people told him not to. Let's listen to this part of the speech.
And the coup de grace was the lockdown. The lockdown was the biggest shift in wealth in human history, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second. And I blame President Trump for the lockdown.
Of course you do.
A lot of people say, and President Trump gets blamed for a lot of things that he didn't do, and he gets blamed for some things that he did do. But the worst thing that he did to this country, to our civil rights, to our economy, to the middle class.
You know, I want to talk about this for just a second. Now, yes, of course, he's coming down on the Orange Man Bad platform, and, you know, they strategically seated people up behind him to make sure that he looks like he is insanely popular. But I want to talk about this voice, because I know that for all of the stutter, for all the problems that Joe Biden has, and all the gaffes that he makes, he still sounds somewhat strong when he speaks. Even if he is speaking utter nonsense, he is speaking utter nonsense in a tone and a tenor that strikes at you. Those of us who actually understand how the world works can parse through the bullshit and parse through the fact that he speaks with a confident, solid tone. You know, and I make fun of Biden. Whenever I do the Biden impression, it's, but he doesn't actually talk like him. Well, I do the same thing with the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez when I use the Puerto Rican accent about her, even though she actually doesn't have an accent like that. But she's done so many identity politics to her Puerto Rican identity, it fits with her. But this is a person who does not have a strong voice. And that does play into the physiognomy and the presidential politics. Like, this is not going to be somebody who's going to stand at the podium and tell Xi Jinping, "Hey, you've got to stand down and let there be peace." Xi Jinping will laugh him right out of the stadium.
This country was a lockdown. Now, President Trump, in fairness, let me just make this point, will tell people, well, the lockdown wasn't my idea. It was my bureaucrats rolled me on it. I was saying we shouldn't do it. But that's not a good enough excuse. He was the President of the United States. And as Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. On May 2nd, 2020, 600 doctors signed a letter to President Trump begging him not to allow the lockdowns.
Yeah, that is not a person who can get up and make a speech and instill confidence in people. Yeah, Grant says Trump could have done more to stop it, like firing Fauci. Yeah, there's that aspect of things. And I do think that there was a lot, and I hate to say this, and this was part of the reason that I actually came over from the not going to vote for him the second time for Trump, was the fact that I wanted to see what he could do on a second term. Because I do honestly think that a lot of the decisions that he made were based on whether or not he thought it would affect his chance to be reelected. He's an egotist. Therefore, sign the omnibus bill so people don't have to go and have the government shut down. In spite of the fact that he promised he was never going to sign another one, sign the omnibus bill. Hey, come on, I signed the bill so you have your paychecks. Come and vote for me. Traditionally Democrat government worker voters, come and vote for me, your favorite president. Look at what I did. I signed that omnibus. And the same thing with Fauci. I guarantee you, if he would have fired Fauci, that would have been the top headline, that he was trying to take over and he was going to kill more and more people, and he's just trying to put loyalists back into there. Now, it still would have been the right decision for him to do, but it was all with him jaded with the conversation of, if I do this, will it make it impossible for me to get reelected? So, that's what we have there. Let's look at some of the other headlines that are coming out here to make you feel a little bit, what's the word? What's the word I want to say? Hopeless about this bid. And actually, we've got another big segment of speech here that we can listen to. We'll do that in just a second. But ABC, Disney Corporation, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. launches unlikely presidential bid as Democrat. In the USA Today, exclusive, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. launches unlikely presidential bid backed by 14% of Biden voters. Well, he's already got a double-digit proportion, which is far more than Marianne Williamson had at this point in her campaign. She was at like 3%. She actually has pulled up to double digits at this point, but it took her a long time to get there. So let's go back to ABC and look at this video. Let's hear some more of this guy speaking. Oh, we have no volume.
Announce my candidacy for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. Of this campaign and throughout my presidency will be to end the corrupt merger of state and corporate power. New kind of corporate feudalism in our country to commoditize our children, our Purple Mountain's majesty, to poison our children, our people, with chemicals and pharmaceutical drugs, to strip mine our assets, to hollow out the middle class, and keep us in a constant state of war. I want to start by thanking my wife, Cheryl Hines. I cannot describe in words what she has brought to my life, but she is the wisest person that I know, and she's also one of the funniest people I know. And I think the American people get to know her, that they are going to be more excited about having a really funny first lady.
On the surface, President Biden...
Yeah, that's not a person who can make a speech that instills confidence in the American people. So, good luck, RFK. I would like to see the Democrat debates and to see Joe Biden actually get trotted out before he gets onto the one-on-ones with Trump, DeSantis, Haley. Ooh, I just had a chill run up my spine. Hutchinson. Holy shit, it happened again. Before he gets into the ring with any of them, I want to see these people actually take him down a peg. So, we'll see what happens there. Alright, let's talk about the debt ceiling. Because we have a plan. Allegedly. From CNBC, McCarthy unveils debt ceiling bill that aims to cut big parts of Biden's agenda. That's probably not going to go anywhere. From Chelsea Cox, House Speaker McCarthy on Wednesday released his plan to raise the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion. Why? Why so much? For about a year, while attempting to repeal major components of President Biden's agenda. You know it's not going to happen. I am done with this party. I am. Because they're exactly the same as they were before. Slow down, Democrats. No, slow down. No, we'll still pass your agenda. You just have to do it slower. McCarthy said the bill, called the Limit, Save, and Grow Act of 2023, would save American taxpayers more than $4.5 trillion by limiting discretionary spending, retrieving unspent pandemic-related funds, eliminating Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, and cutting funds earmarked for the IRS. And see, that last part, that's why it's not going to go anywhere. The cuts would be in exchange for a one-year debt ceiling increase. McCarthy called on Biden and Chuck U. Schumer to sit down, negotiate, and address this crisis, but did not mention whether the bill has enough support to pass. Biden has refused to negotiate over the debt limit. Extraordinary measures to avoid a first-ever U.S. sovereign debt default are on track to run out this summer. Well, now that we've introduced a clear plan for a responsible debt limit increase, they have no more excuse and refuse to negotiate, McCarthy said. Oh, we've got some RFK stuff. RFK won't make it past the honorary car ride in Dallas. My main advice to RFK is don't accept the offers to ride in a parade. Especially if they tell him the experience will blow his mind. God, I need a sounder board. Alright. McCarthy did not say when he would bring the bill to a vote in the House. It still wasn't clear whether he had support within his own caucus to pass the bill. I never give up. We'll get them, he told NBC News on Wednesday. Even if the House GOP passes it, the Democratic-controlled Senate would likely kill the measure. McCarthy's announcement comes after days of speculation about the GOP proposal to temporarily raise the debt limit for certain cutbacks, such as a stall on non-defense discretionary spending. Well, we can stall the defense discretionary spending too, and some of the non-discretionary defense spending. Like, we have way too much military in this country, and a lot of people know it. The House Speaker also doubled down on proposals for stricter work requirements for adults without dependents, the repeal of Biden's army of 87,000 IRS agents, and the president's student loan forgiveness program, which could be killed by the Supreme Court. Justices are expected to rule on the student loan program by early summer. I want to talk about the able-bodied adults without dependents for work requirements for that. I want to talk about that for just a second. In relation to what happened in Wisconsin, because I didn't realize this. I heard it, another podcaster was talking about it. And then I looked into it when it was pointed out to me. I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been Shapiro. Maybe. But another podcaster was talking about what happened with the Protasewicz race in Wisconsin. And I had mentioned the fact that there was a provision on the bill to get public support on repealing the 1849 abortion ban in the state, which I have very much railed about the fact that wasn't the point of getting Protasewicz in. It wasn't because of that. It's all about Act 10. But one of the things that was pointed out, and I didn't even look at the statistics for that ballot provision, there was another ballot provision on the Wisconsin ballot that said, should able-bodied adults without dependents be forced to work to get government benefits, unemployment, welfare, etc. And that was a resounding yes in this state. 87% said yes to that ballot provision. So either there was a stuffing measure to get ballots that were marked for Protasewicz and the abortion question into there, or just a Trump candidate was really unpopular, and I don't know where to go with that. Yes, Mr. Scott, I have it bookmarked. It's right here. I have it bookmarked. We'll be looking into this. I'll look into this after the show. Smith Modernization Act. McCarthy's announcement comes after days of speculation about the GOP proposal to temporarily raise the debt limit for certain cutbacks. We read that part already. McCarthy also argued the measures will protect Social Security and Medicare by driving more people into the workforce to pay for it. Yet Democrats say it will hurt millions. Because they have to say that, because if they admit the fact that it won't hurt millions, they will lose droves of their followers who will call them far-right and extremists. They have to come out and say it'll hurt people. They don't have a choice at this point. Speaker McCarthy's proposal is not about jobs. Frank Pallone of New Jersey, ranking member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, said after McCarthy's announcement, "It's a Trojan horse intended to use red tape and onerous paperwork to kick millions of people off their health insurance." Well, I haven't read the proposal yet, but I'm pretty sure that's not in there. Because Republicans do not believe in our nation's social safety net. Republicans are creating a debt crisis to justify these cruel plans. They have to put all this drama in there. Republicans' narrow majority in the House means McCarthy can only afford to lose a handful of GOP votes, given Democrats' opposition. Let me be clear, this proposal is dead on arrival, Pallone said on Wednesday, which is probably true, by the way. Mostly because it doesn't go far enough. So we have that. CNN. White House escalates political pressure on GOP as McCarthy unveils debt limit proposal. From Bill Mattingly. White House officials have spent weeks engaged in skirmishes with House Republicans over the looming debt ceiling battle. Those skirmishes have now expanded into an all-out war. President Brandon's economic speech in Maryland on Wednesday, which leveled a series of policy and political attacks at House Republicans, because it's always political, by the way, serves as a critical marker for White House moving quickly to escalate the political pressure on House Republicans as the calendar moves closer to the deadline to raise the nation's borrowing limit. Months of messaging and rapid response efforts to counter the nascent House GOP debt limit proposals evolved this week into a full-scale effort to undercut Speaker McCarthy's spending cut and debt ceiling proposal at the moment of inception. Yeah, they've been planning this. They've already had canned responses for just about anything that could come out from this. Now, of course, they can't run out, and we saw with what Pallone had to say. He can't come out and say, Social Security and Medicare, because it's not in the bill. So he's going to go move on to healthcare instead. Biden's remarks, though planned for several weeks, provided a window into the trigger for the escalation. Just 2 days ago, the Speaker of the House, Kevin Barney, went to the Wall Street to describe the MAGA economic vision for America. And Biden loves to try to tell us that Kevin McCarthy is MAGA. Kevin McCarthy is not MAGA. Kevin McCarthy is old guard, Bushite Republican. McCarthy's high-profile remarks, which broadly outlined the Republican push for steep spending cuts in exchange for a debt ceiling increase, set in motion the House Republican push to pass a proposal and shift the entrenched political dynamics. American debt is a ticking time bomb that will detonate unless we take serious responsible action, McCarthy said in his New York speech, which previewed a proposal that was made public on Wednesday. Biden's remarks at a union hall, because of course it's at a union hall in Maryland, that serve as a clear response. And by the way, again, they're not hiding their agenda by continuing to go to organized labor events. It's not about abortion on the Democrat Party, as much as our Christian nationalist friends want to tell us it's about abortion and transgenderism. It's not. But those are the wedge issues that they're using to keep the progressives in line and make sure that they keep voting for union-friendly policies. Well, massive cuts in programs you count on, man. The threat of defaulting on America's debt for the first time in 230 years, man. Come on. The positions of the two sides remain unchanged and completely incompatible. Biden and his top advisors say unequivocally they will not negotiate over a debt ceiling increase and will only accept a clean proposal to raise the nation's borrowing limit. McCarthy and House Republicans have labeled that position a non-starter and are demanding significant spending cuts in order to sign on to any increase. So, the fight is on. We'll see what happens. Washington Post, which this is going to be objective, trust me. House GOP unveils bill to cut spending, lift debt ceiling. Here's how. From Tony Rahm from the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. Speaker McCarthy on Wednesday unveiled a bill to raise the debt ceiling into next year, slash federal spending by roughly $130 billion, and unwind some of President Biden's priorities and recent legislative accomplishments, including his program to cancel college student debt. The proposal marks an escalation in the standoff between the House GOP majority and Biden, as Republican leaders harden in their resolve to exploit a key fiscal deadline for political leverage, even at the risk of causing the U.S. government to default. McCarthy plans to bring legislation to the House floor as soon as next week, estimating it will save the government $4.5 trillion over the next decade. But its path to passage is complicated. Republicans have 222 votes, so the Speaker can only afford to lose 4 to prevail. Democrats, meanwhile, vehemently oppose the measure, ensuring its failure in the Senate. Still, House Republicans believe in passing the bill could put political pressure on Biden, who has refused to negotiate out of a belief that lawmakers should increase the debt ceiling without conditions. Here's what the GOP bill would do. Raise the debt ceiling into 2024. At the center of the fight is the debt ceiling, the legal limit on how much the U.S. can borrow to pay its bills. The U.S. hit its current limit, set at $31 trillion in January, prompting the Treasury Department to start taking special maneuvers to continue paying federal bills and stave off fiscal calamity. But the Biden admin may run out of options as soon as early June. House Republicans would raise the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion or until March 31st, 2024, whichever comes first. That would prevent a default, but it would also tee up a return to the same battle in just over a year. Right before the next presidential election, behind the scenes, GOP leaders have touted that timeframe as a selling point with their members, since it may give them another opportunity to make more demands of the White House. Massive spending cuts. The GOP proposal would slash the federal budget back to levels adopted in the 2022 fiscal year, which could amount to $130 billion in spending cuts for 2024. Can't you get any more than that? The spending reductions are likely to target federal healthcare, science, and education, climate, energy, labor, and research programs, while leaving untouched the Pentagon and services for veterans. And the Washington Post put that in there in a specific way. Number one, putting healthcare on top, and then, but they're not going to touch the Pentagon. But the bill does not specify the exact agencies or programs on the chopping block, leaving the task to lawmakers on congressional appropriations committees who craft spending bills that keep the government running and stave off a shutdown. Republicans also proposed a cap to any growth in federal agencies, future budgets at 1%, further hoping to save the government money. Oh, dude, that's 10 on both sides. That's not even a hard question. Highlighting the harms of such cuts earlier in this year, Biden admin officials predicted more flight delays, slower Social Security checks, reduced college aid for needy students, and significant reductions in the number of people served by affordable housing programs, according to letters they sent to Congress earlier this year. Fear porn, basically. The missives, which analyzed an earlier version of the GOP plan, set cuts back to 2022 levels, would also hamstring government agencies that respond to extreme weather, eliminate 170,000 slots in key federal preschool programs, and impact the IRS and its ability to provide timely refunds. Now, see, that's the other thing. The Washington Post is doing an excellent job of propaganda for the Biden admin. And they are very good about it. And they're doing this in a way that feigns objectivity, but still says the right words to outrage their left-wing audience. They're not saying that they're going to cut back the IRS agents, which is something that McCarthy specifically talked about. It's the impact of the IRS and the ability to provide you your timely refund. Not go after audits, not tax the rich, not anything else, but to get you your timely refund. New work requirements for welfare, which are astoundingly popular in this country, by the way. Millions of low-income Americans who receive food stamps and health insurance from the federal government would have to work longer hours in exchange for benefits under the new GOP bill. First, the bill targets the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP. It would subject adults without children to new work requirements until they reach the age of 56, replacing current law, which only imposes those rules until age 49. The GOP bill would also make it harder for states to spare certain families from federal work requirements, a flexibility that some states have used to help lower-income people during times of high unemployment. With Medicaid, meanwhile, Republicans proposed a new rule requiring the low-income recipients of federal health insurance to satisfy certain income or work thresholds that includes, for example, participating in 80 hours per month in employment or community service, which is a 20-hour work week. Otherwise, states could remove these enrollees from the safety net programs. The rules would cover beneficiaries from age 19 to age 56, with some exceptions such as those who are pregnant or caring for young children. The work requirements may save the government money, but they threaten to come at the cost of millions of families' financial well-being. Dude, if you're getting money from the government, you can give a little bit back. I've been adamant about this, especially if you don't have dependents. And this doesn't seem to affect dependents. This is just able-bodied adults that don't have kids. So, and again, the Washington Post is doing a very good job of the propaganda on this. We've got an op-ed from Politico, which the opinions that are expressed in this article are the opinions of the writer, which is Nathan Tankus. I wonder if he's a tanky. And not necessarily the opinions of Politico, Turns the Pages Productions, Contemporary, or your host, J. Edgar. But I wanted to get into this and talk a little bit more about the propaganda that's being spread about this. Biden can steamroll Republicans on the debt ceiling, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell won't interfere. Which is interesting because I do agree with Nathan Tankus. Yes, Biden admin can steamroll McCarthy on this, but not for the reasons that I'm more than likely going to be laid out in this article. The threat of a real debt ceiling crisis is growing rapidly. House Republicans are still pushing steep spending cuts that the White House won't countenance, even as the GOP remains deeply divided on a strategy. And we're now as little as 8 weeks away from the X date, when the Treasury Department no longer has the legal authorization to issue new securities and fill up its checking account. It's past time for the White House to consider their unilateral options for avoiding economic disaster more seriously. Perhaps the most prominent proposal to sideline Congress calls for the Treasury to mint $1 trillion platinum coin. It's always there. and deposit it with the Federal Reserve, ensuring the government has plenty of money to pay its bills. That's always the first thing. And this guy, by the way, is the director of Modern Money Network. He's a MMT guy. So far, Treasury Secretary Yellen has rejected the idea, warning that the Fed might not accept the coin and that, in her view, the central bank is not legally obligated to accept it. There are more ideas floating around, but the one that they all have in common is that they rely on the Federal Reserve's cooperation and its willingness to continue acting as the government's fiscal agent, essentially its banker, a role established by the Fed's statute. Under one scenario, for instance, if the Treasury Department decided to switch to issuing low face value, high coupon bonds, the Federal Reserve would have to facilitate the creation of such bonds in their book entry system, facilitate their sale, and make periodic interest payments on the Treasury's behalf. Alternatively, if the Biden admin so decided to declare the debt ceiling unconstitutional, which they cannot do, or made other similar maneuvers, the Fed would again have to facilitate the auctions of securities and defer to Treasury legal interpretation in this sense. The platinum coin option is the most straightforward one since it draws the Federal Reserve's most basic fiscal agent responsibilities, accepting deposits. So again, this is an MMT guy. I'm putting this one in the Discord, by the way, because I would love to see what my friend Midget B has to say about that. Let's go ahead and drop that in there into general chat. If you guys want to go check that out and comment along, put a little arrow over there and say at brain damage, and we'll likely get them. There'll likely be something nice for me to go back and read a little bit later on. But yeah, it's always the $1 trillion platinum coin. Now, realistically, yes, Biden can steamroll McCarthy in these negotiations, based on the fact not that he can go back and mint the coin or do anything else like that, but the Biden admin does have a captive media who will spin whatever this is. And I mean, we've seen this with CNN, we've seen this with the Associated Press, we've seen this with the Washington Post. They will take whatever proposal McCarthy is putting up and spin it into, he's trying to hurt the poor, and all we're trying to do is make it better for the poor and just raise the debt ceiling. You don't have the political leverage, which realistically they kind of don't. Any proposal that comes up will be killed by the Senate. We are probably going to wind up in a position of the debt ceiling being either suspended or going into the default. And neither of them are going to be good for the markets. So if you've got the land, hoe in another row. If you've got the ability, make another dozen jars of whatever will give you calories in case the markets drop out. And if you see it in the store, or you've got reloading equipment, get yourself another box of ammo. Because it's going to get real weird around here. I don't know why this one's all the way over here. We got another one on RFK that I didn't get to. I must have missed that when I was going off of this. But yeah, here's another completely objective headline about RFK. Anti-vaccine activist RFK Jr. launches presidential campaign. I knew I was missing one. Alright, but that's where we are at the debt ceiling. They're not going to do jack shit about it. And we all kind of knew that, too, by the way. Let's talk about Matt Walsh. Words that I never thought I would say on Contemporary. Post-millennial, no author given, it appears that Daily Wire's Matt Walsh has had his Twitter account hacked. On Tuesday evening, the account posted numerous provocative claims and racist language. The bio was changed to promote a rap Spotify account called Sassy Shooters. That doesn't sound like a rap Spotify account. That sounds like That sounds kind of fruity to me, doesn't it? That sounds like the kind of group whose affiliation you can't say in Florida. That's the shooters! Bang bang! Among the shocking tweets, Joe Rogan is a pedophile. I can confirm Andrew Tate. Cobra Tate kidnapped and raped those girls. Ben Shapiro, you know what you did. You're a closeted homosexual and hide behind being Jewish. And the pinned tweet, my pronouns are that. Not going to say that on a YouTube stream. The account also posted a photo of a phone with the caption, my Twitter isn't hacked. This is just the real me coming out. The image indicated whoever has the phone is in the Eastern time zone. The hack means that Walsh's DMs have been compromised. The tweets were deleted just before the time of publication. Walsh, Daily Wire commentator, is an outspoken critic of radical transgenderism and the target of children by trans activists. Walsh's colleague Ben Shapiro responded to the hack on Twitter. Look, okay gang, over the past few months, my friend Matt Walsh's blog has been threatened to the extent that he's had to have full-time security at his home to protect his family. Now he's been hacked. The tolerant and divisive and the tolerant and diverse and the real diverse kind of crowd are celebrating, of course. With screenshots. Alejandro Carabello, Matt Walsh's account has been hacked. Couldn't have happened to a more miserable piece of shit. And Ron Filipkowski as well. Matt Walsh got hacked and the last hour of his account has been fun. Also from Occupy Democrats. Breaking! Far-right transphobe appears to have had his Twitter account hacked as it begins pumping out deeply offensive tweets. Calling his boss, Ben Shapiro, closeted homosexual who hides behind being Jewish and saying Joe Rogan is a pedophile. Retweet if you think the hack could have happened to a nicer guy. Walsh recently helped lead a Budweiser boycott in light of the Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney partnership. The Bud Light boycott has been by far one of the most successful conservative efforts to push back against corporate wokeism we've ever seen. By the very wary and any conservative who is naysaying this, we're actually making a dent and they're complaining. Remember that. So, and by the way, from what it seems like too, it wasn't just the fact that they went out and like got into his Twitter and started posting from there. From what it seems is they either got into his phone remotely or duplicated his SIM card and were able to duplicate his phone settings, which had his passwords all keylogged and everything else. From Wired. The hacker who hijacked Matt Walsh's Twitter was just bored. Del Cameron reporting. The hacker who claims to have compromised the Twitter account of right-wing commentator Matt Walsh last night says that he meant no harm. He was clearly in a position to exact some. The whole purpose of the attack, he says, was to stir up controversy and sow chaos on Twitter. If that was all he was after, well, mission accomplished. Walsh's account first appeared compromised Tuesday after a series of out-of-character posts appeared on his feed. They included jabs at fellow conservative media figures, including Shapiro. Other tweets included Joe Rogan as a pedophile, Andrew Tate stuff. Due to his efforts to foment attacks against the LGBTQIRAMIGXTBYOUMATLUAXTAIEOU, sometimes Y community, online and in media, denigrating trans people, in particular as groomers. Walsh drew criticism more recently over a series of resurfaced remarks in which he refers to girls as young as 16 as being the most fertile. That was taken completely out of context. I listened to that episode. The intent was to make funny tweets, as Matt Walsh likes to trigger people, said Doomed, who declined to provide his real name. We caused no financial harm, threatened anyone, nor ruined anything. It was merely, he says, a few silly words on social media. The hack was accomplished, Doom says, using a technique known as SIM swapping. The attack typically involves hackers tricking a cellular provider into switching a victim's phone number to a SIM card the hackers control rather than one in the victim's phone. Doomed, however, claims Walsh's phone was compromised with the help of an insider. Does not surprise me that there's somebody on the inside of the Daily Wire that could do that. In addition to his Twitter account, Walsh's Google and Microsoft accounts appear to have been compromised, granting Doomed unfettered access to the right-wing host's private emails. And by the way, this is coming for the rest of us too. There's phishing involved, there's stuff like that. But since I got my new phone, I get phishing texts constantly. Well, there's a problem with billing to your PayPal account, which is funny because my PayPal account got disabled a year ago. Yeah, that's fair, 80s kid. The guy that memed Hillary meant no harm, getting the book thrown at him. That's correct. Absolutely is. From Forbes, Wired journalist banned from Twitter for reporting on hack of anti-trans activist Matt Walsh from Matt Novak. A reporter at Wired has been banned from Twitter after he wrote about the fact that anti-trans activist Matt Walsh had his Twitter account hacked. Walsh's account was hacked on Tuesday, started posting offensive tweets. Del Cameron, senior writer at Wired who covers big tech, wrote about the hack on Wednesday and even interviewed the person allegedly responsible for posting to Walsh's account. The interview was apparently enough to get Cameron banned for violating Twitter's rules on distribution of hacked material. That's actually probably not right. I would appeal that. The private documents were not published in any way at Wired, but even mentioning the existence of the hacked material seems to have run afoul of Twitter policies. That's why I said that's bullshit. But it is at least consistent because it's the same rules that they used for the Hunter Biden laptop leak. Like, you only had to mention the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake, and you got banned from Twitter. That was still under Parag, but still. So, that's where we're at with that. We're going to do a few culture war things, and then hear what left-wing actress on The View has to say about them. Let's start with this one from WGN9 out of Chicago. Supreme Court set to rule on abortion pill restrictions. Coming to WGN from the Associated Press. The Supreme Court is deciding whether women will face restrictions on getting a drug used in the most common method of abortion in the U.S. while the lawsuit continues. The justices are expected to issue an order on Wednesday in a fast-moving case from Texas in which an abortion opponents are seeking to roll back an FDA admin approval of the drug mifepristone. The drug first won FDA approval in 2000, and conditions on its use have been loosened in recent years, including making it available by mail in states that allow access. The Biden admin and New York-based Danco Laboratories, the maker of the drug, want the nation's highest court to reject the limits on mifepristone's use imposed by lower courts, at least as long as the legal case makes its way through the courts. They say the women who want the drug and providers who dispense it will face chaos of limits on the drug take effect. Depending on what the justices decide, that could include requiring women to take a higher dosage of the drug than the FDA says is necessary. How and why? That makes absolutely zero sense. Alliance Defending Freedom, representing the anti-abortion doctors and medical groups in a challenge to the drug, is defending the rulings, calling on the Supreme Court to let the restrictions take effect now. The legal fight over the abortion comes less than a year after the conservative justices reversed Roe v. Wade and allowed more than a dozen states to effectively ban abortion outright. Even as the abortion landscape has changed dramatically in several states, abortion opponents set their sights on medical abortions, which make up more than half of all abortions in the U.S. If the abortion opponents filed the suit in November in Amarillo, the legal challenge quickly reached the Supreme Court after a federal judge issued a ruling on April 7th that would revoke the FDA approval of mifepristone, one of two drugs used in medical abortions, which has been overturned but with restrictions now. And of course, the Moloch worshippers want there to be unfettered access up to the moment of birth, no matter what, in all 50 states, everywhere, because they need more sacrifice to Moloch so they can live forever or something. I don't know what they're actually sacrificing for, but I still think that it should be up for the states to decide. That is what we were told in the overturn of Roe v. Wade. It's up to the states. We'll see if they stand up to that. I don't know. I don't know what this court is going to do. From the Dissociated Press, Montana bill to deny care for transgender minors passes. From Amy Beth Hansen. A Montana bill to deny gender affirming medical care to young transgender residents passed a final vote in the state Senate on Wednesday, which sends the measure to the Republican Governor Greg Gianforte for his consideration. Lambda Legal, the ACLU, have said that they will take legal action if the bill becomes law. Gianforte will carefully consider the bill in their final form as they arrive to his desk, Caitlin Price said when asked if Gianforte had decided how he would act on the bill. At least 9 states have enacted similar bans, with those in Alabama and Arkansas blocked by the courts. Other states have considered or are considering such bans. Montana lawmakers seem hell-bent on joining the growing roster of states, determined to jeopardize the health... Oh my god, the editorialization of this. The health and lives of transgender youth in direct opposition to the overwhelming body of scientific... oh my... Like, why can't they just be objective? I'm anti-trans for kids, and I can be objective. And this, by the way, passes green check verification too, in spite of the fact that this is a step away from an op-ed. I will walk back what I just said. I will give this one a little bit of credence because this is a quote. I got halfway through that paragraph and I realized this is a quote from Lambda Legal and the ACLU. The Senate voted 32-17 on party lines Wednesday to approve the amendments made in the House, the body's final action on the bill that seeks to ban the use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery to treat minors diagnosed with gender dysphoria. The diagnosis requires an insistent, persistent, and consistent declaration by someone that they are different from their sex assigned at birth. I don't understand why you want to chop your wee-wee off, especially at such a young age. Before you've had the experience to grow up and say, okay, I like girls now. Here's some video of that event, 14 seconds worth of that.
And the only thing I will say is if you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands. And then the only thing I will say is if you vote yes on this bill.
That is transsexual Democrat Zoe Zephyr making a speech on the bill, who's now been censured, by the way. From the Hill, Montana GOP caucus calls for censure of transgender lawmaker. From Brooke Migden, a group of Republicans in the Montana legislature have called for the immediate censure of Zoe Zephyr, the state's first and only openly transgender legislator, after she told lawmakers on Tuesday that there would be blood on your hands if a bill to ban minors from accessing gender-affirming health care is approved by the State House. Are there really a bunch of other transgender legislators in Montana? That seems unlikely to me. I don't know. That seems very unlikely to me. If you are forcing a trans child to go through puberty when they are trans, that's a tantamount to torture. This body should be ashamed, as Zephyr said Tuesday during a floor debate over amendments to Montana's Senate Bill 99, a wide-reaching bill that would prevent the medical professionals from administering gender-affirming health care to transgender youths who were under 18. The youths in question. I just watched that movie the other day. If you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands. Well, when I bow my heads in prayer, I see the blood on my hands, the blood of Christ, which has come from heaven to wash away my sins. Responding to Zephyr during Tuesday's floor debate, Montana House Majority Leader Sue Vinton said the legislature will not be shamed by anyone in the chamber. We are better than that. And we have editorialize, 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 editorialize. More than half of transgender and non-binary young people in a recent survey said they've seriously considered suicide in the past year. Well, get help for that. How many still did after the fact? The Montana Freedom Caucus, a coalition of state House and Senate Republicans, called for the immediate censure of Zephyr in a statement posted to the group's social media late Tuesday. The group said she attempted to shame members of the legislature by using inappropriate and uncalled for language during Tuesday's floor debate. This kind of hateful rhetoric from the elected official is exactly why tragedies such as the Covenant Christian school shooting in Nashville occurred. The group wrote in its statement, referring to a mass shooting in Tennessee last month that left 6 people dead, including 3 9-year-old students. I don't know. Well, I think censure is the appropriate position in this. Like, she's not expelled, and she's not restricted from voting, which means she can still represent her constituents. But it is a show that they disapprove of her behavior. But the biggest crime of all of this comes from the independent record. Out of Helena, caucus of 21 GOP lawmakers misgenders colleague in calls for censure. That's right, that's the big crime that's at play here. They misgendered her. Oof. Caster. Alright, anyway. This is from Holly Michaels. More than 20 GOP lawmakers have misgendered a state legislator and calling for her censure after comments made on the House floor on Tuesday. Will Democrat leadership rebuke the call? During a debate on amendments to a bill that would ban some gender-affirming care for transgender minors, Zoe Zephyr of Missoula spoke in opposition. The amendments were a Greg Gianforte's suggestion that the bill was now headed back to him, with his changes approved by lawmakers. Yeah, we read the quote there. The 21 legislators who called for censure are part of the Self-Random Freedom Caucus formed earlier this session. The legislature itself has not yet issued a collective statement acknowledging the wrongdoing and upholding a committee to civil discord, the caucus wrote in a press release. In response, House Minority Leader Kim Abbott of Helena issued a sharp statement. The language used by so-called Freedom Caucus, including the intentional and repeated misgendering of Rep. Zephyr, is blatantly disrespectful and the furthest thing imaginable from the commitment to civil discourse that these letter writers demand. I find it incredibly ironic that these legislators are making demands of others that they refuse to abide by themselves. Fight? Fight? Yeah, I just put myself in a position where I don't have to seek an abortion, so I don't want to face any of that. Alright, more trans stuff from the Daily Wire. Biden admin internal email warned trans people face increasing attacks days after Nashville shooting. I'm sure that that's not actually the case because with the ACLU and Ben Crump involved, it would be plastered all over the goddamn news. From Myreed Elordi. The Biden admin sent an internal email warning that transgender people face increasing attacks just days after a trans-identified shooter killed 6 at a Christian school in Nashville. The email was sent by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a federal agency that works to enforce federal civil rights laws against workplace discrimination. The communication was obtained by the Heritage Foundation and shared with the Daily Wire. At a time when the transgender individuals and their families face increasing attacks on their rights and basic humanity, it is critically important for the EEOC to continue enforcing the rights of transgender workers. Under the law, reads the email from the EEOC chairwoman, Charlotte Burrows. Yeah, they're not facing increasing attacks, again, because we'd hear about them. Let's see. And before we jump off of this topic, I have one more, just a bit of a pushback, that I've actually, I think, got some, well, one to make fun of, and then some actual good news before we finish off with something I'm thankful for. Let's see. Left-wing actress on The View says she sees no difference between Christian right and the Taliban. Observers educate her. Left-wing actress Patti LuPone. Left-wing actress seems like a but I repeat myself kind of moment. Although I guess we live in a world where Candace Cameron Bure exists. Appeared on The View Tuesday and said she sees no difference between our Christian right and the Taliban. Fox News said Lupone made her declaration in response to a question from far-left co-host Anna Navarro about Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYOUTMAEIOU sometimes Y community. Look at the picture. Okay, I could see that. I could get Karen out of this. Do we have the video? Yes, we do. And then the response. Let's listen.
DeSantis and the LGBTQ.
Well, that's extremely upsetting.
Yeah.
That is extremely upsetting. These are human beings.
Yeah.
And I could cry. They're not harming anybody.
No.
I don't know why he's doing this. I don't know. I mean, you know, and I've said this before, and I'm going to get in trouble. But I have said this before, and it's been in print. I don't know what the difference between our Christian right and the Taliban is. I have no idea what the difference is.
You're not the only person who's said that.
I just don't know what the difference is.
Yeah.
What's happening in this country right now in the name of religion is so dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's not this country. It's not America as far as... And you know, when I was growing up, I didn't know America was an experiment. They never said America was an experiment. When we were growing up, it was a democracy. And now it's in, you know, such danger. It's so upsetting.
Yeah.
It's so upsetting. And it's upsetting to hear the loudest voices and not any kind of pushback to the loudest voices that are the extremity in this country.
Well, that's why we need people like you.
Well, here's some of the pushback. Jason Rance wrote that Lupone is noted for her ability to make people uncomfortable, for her diva outbursts on stage. Imagine the outrage if she said that about any other religion, but remember, she's the tolerant one. Isabella DeLuca, an activist who was assaulted by Antifa rioters for carrying a Trump flag to a women's march in protest in D.C., wrote, "If you don't think there's a blatant anti-Christian bias in society, then you aren't paying attention." Larry Menti replied, "The Taliban wouldn't even allow a show like The View with all women and may execute them for not wearing head coverings. Their idiocy has no limits." C.J. Pearson said, "The View doesn't need to be condemned, it needs to be cancelled. Imagine if anyone said this about any other religion. Imagine." Now, see, I will actually push back against Pearson on this. I want The View to exist. The View has almost completely unfettered glimpses into the actual mind of progressives when they think that nobody else is watching and they can get away with saying it. We can see what it is that they actually think, and, you know, this actually goes on the opposite side, but in the same vein of years ago when I was still doing one-off solo videos, I made a video about a hardware store owner in Tennessee that had a "No Gays Allowed" sign on his store, and he was getting pushback for that. And I even said at the time, I said, I want this guy to put this sign out in front of his store so I know not to go and shop there. I want the hateful rhetoric out there so I know how evil these people are. I want them to be able to say this kind of stuff loudly and freely so I can point a finger and say, this is what they really think of you. So, that's where we are at for that. Alright, here's one that's not going to work. New York AG, this is Letitia James, by the way, to host first gun buyback event in effort to curb violence. If you are in New York, Get some 2x4s and some pipe and some makeshift firing pins. As long as they have a working action and can hold a shotgun shell, there's $500 for you a pop. For probably $10 worth of materials each. This is from Julia Mueller. A.G. James is hosting the state's first gun buyback later this month, her office announced on Tuesday in an effort to curb gun violence. The AG's office will pay $500 per assault rifle or ghost gun. That is the stupidest sentence I've ever seen in my life. A gun that you make homemade without a serial number. That is the definition of a ghost gun according to them. $500 for the first handgun turned in per person, and smaller dollar amounts for various other firearms turned in on site at 9 events statewide on April 29th, according to a release. Both working and non-working unloaded firearms will be accepted in exchange for prepaid gift cards, with no questions asked. The office said, though the weapons are required to be turned in within a bag or a box, there is no limit on the number of weapons that can be turned in. Man, this always... They always do this. This is an amnesty program in which no questions will be asked about the person dropping off the gun, which that's another question that you should be doing, especially given the strict serial number and gun registry laws in New York, because you need to make sure those guns aren't stolen, because that's a federal crime. Trafficking a stolen firearm, even if it's backed at the government, that's a felony. And by the way, that's a felony against the person accepting too. We're doing everything we can to get dangerous guns off our street and stop gun violence, James said on Twitter. Well, all you're going to get is 2x4s with crude pipes on them. Morons. From the Blaze. Some good news. Damar Hamlin fully cleared to play football again just 3 months after scary on-field collapse. There are things that I cannot say about this because we are on YouTube. Keep that in mind. But I will come out and say that congratulations for getting back up, fit, and able to get back out onto the field. I hope nothing else happens to you while you're out there. From Courtney Wheel. Bills safety Damar Hamlin has been fully cleared by medical professionals to return to professional football, the team has confirmed. Brandon Beane shared the good news at a press conference on Tuesday. Hamlin is cleared to resume full activities, just like anyone else who is coming back from an injury, Beane stated. Beane explained that Hamlin remains in touch with medical specialists who have all approved Hamlin for full return to play. They're all in agreement, Beane said. They're all in lockstep that Hamlin should be able to play without further restrictions. Let's listen.
Since then, he's seen 3 additional specialists, most recently on Friday, and they're all in agreement.
Not only is it on one channel, but it's incredibly quiet too. I apologize for that. And this is a Twitter issue. This is not my mixing board issue.
It's not 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 or anything like that. They're all in lockstep of what this was, and that he is cleared, resumed full activities, just like anyone else who was coming back from an injury or whatever. So he's fully cleared. He's here, and he is of the mindset. He's in a great headspace to come back and make his return.
So, yes, he has survived. He's back up. He's moving around, and he could be back on the field this season. We'll see. And Mazel Tov, by the way. happy to see. Let's listen to this.
Now that my brothers have closed out a strong winning season, as I continue to make so much progress recovering, I think it's finally a good time to share a few things. I think it was important for me to wait and speak publicly at the right time, as it was just a lot to process within my own self, mentally, physically, even spiritually. It's just been a lot to process, but I can't tell you how appreciative I am of all the love, all the support, and everything that's just been coming in my way. What happened to me on Monday Night Football, I feel is a direct example of God using me as a vessel to share my passion and my love directly from my heart with the entire world. And now I'm able to give it back to kids and communities all across the world who need it the most. And that's always been my dream. That's always been what I stood for and what I will continue to stand for. And with that being said, I want to thank a few people who helped me most directly to get back to this moment to where I'm able to speak to you. The Bills training, athletic, and medical staff, notably Nate, Denny, Joe Mika, Tabani, Dr. Bassan, Dr. White, Dr. Kim, Dr. Mark Feinberg, Joe Collins, Dr. Daz, Marissa, Dr. Musio, Corey Reblin, and last but not least, I can't forget Kels. The University of Cincinnati Medical Center, starting with Dr. Timothy Pritz, Dr. William Knight, and all the first responders who acted swiftly and skillfully to save my life. To all the medical personnel and healthcare providers at both Cincinnati Medical Center and Buffalo General Hospital, Dr. Jamie Nadler, Dr. Ken Snyder, Dr. Levy, and Dr. Chi Kim. To my mom and my dad, who are literally my anchors and my everything, who never left my side the entire time. To my little bro, who is my why, my reason why I strive to be my best self every day. And to all my family and friends who supported me in many ways during this time, whether it was showing up for visits or just a single text just to check on how I was doing. To Bills Mafia, I just want to thank you so much for the genuine love and support. Ever since I became a Buffalo Bill, it's been nothing but genuine love and support, not even only for me, but everyone's situation, no matter what it was, Bills Mafia jumped behind it and gave 110% support, love, no matter the situation. With this happening to me, I didn't feel anything short of the love, and it really helped me stay encouraged to get through the toughest moments and the toughest times. I really can't thank you enough. To the entire Bills organization, my brothers who made it a priority to lift me up spiritually, mentally, and in every way possible, reaching out every day, seeing how I was doing, calling, texting, just checking up on me no matter the situation. I'm proud to be a part of this team. I'm proud to be able to call you guys my brothers. To the city of Cincinnati, the Bengals, and the entire NFL, just for putting team allegiance aside to root for one kid's life, and just the humanity of a player, that's wearing Buffalo blue. You put humanity above team loyalty. You showed the world unity over division. I'm not surprised by it, but I'm deeply grateful, and I'll be forever thankful and indebted to that. To all the kids who sent me letters and heartwarming gifts, you mean the
Okay,
world.
I didn't know that this was going to go on this long.
Every day.
I do like to hear the appreciation,
keep
though.
Dreaming big and to just continue to keep helping making this world a better place. It's always been important for me to be a role model, but just seeing the love and the support from the youth, it just makes me want to give back and get out in the communities and touch the kids and just be that example that they can look to, touch, feel, talk to, and know that whatever they dream of, it's real. It can happen if you stay focused, stay dedicated, stay committed to whatever you got going on, because that's pretty much what got me here. That's what got me in this position. Thank you to everyone who donated in any type of way to the Chasing Them's Foundation. My mind is literally blown away from all the support. I don't even have the words to express the gratitude for the amount of support that was given into that. That was something that was started even way before I made it to the NFL. Something that was started small just to be able to...
Well, He had quite the lengthy speech out this. Especially being an Instagram reel, I thought this was only going to be a minute or two, but I'm glad to see that he has such a big support network for that. And I'm glad to see that he's up recovering and able to go back to work. So, from the New York Post, we'll actually finish up today again. New York schools banned from calling teams Warriors, Chiefs, Braves using Native American mascots. From Carl Campanile and Jesse O'Neill. So, what do we do about the movie Major League, by the way? I like that movie. Public school teams in New York will be soon barred from calling themselves names like Warriors, Chiefs, Redmen, or Braves following a Tuesday ruling by Albany education honchos. The Board of Regents, which presides over the state's education department, voted to phase out Native American-related nicknames as part of a politically correct national effort to scrub racially insensitive imagery from sports teams. Nearly 60 school districts will be required to eliminate all use of Indigenous-related mascots and imagery by the end of the 2024-2025 school year or risk losing state aid, board members unanimously ruled. The new ban, supported by the Shinnecock Indian Nation and Oneida Indian Nation, does not apply to tribal schools, education officials said. Now, to use a tribal name for a tribal school, that seems counterproductive. It's the right thing to do. Our desire is to elevate people, not diminish them. We want to elevate all people, Regent Kathleen Cashin told the Post over the phone. This is really what we're fighting about. It really is. And I mean, there are just storied histories from many of these franchises using these names in a way that didn't offend anybody until like 7 years ago. I didn't know that the Indians changed their names to the Guardians. So again, that goes back to my initial question. Does that mean that Major League has to be completely reshot? Can they get Charlie Sheen off the coke long enough to redo that movie? But that's where we're at in this society. And the last one, I still call this good news, honestly. Don't like the senator. And I think it's wild the fact that he can come out and give this stumbling speech. But I'm still glad that he is alive and back into the whims of his voters. If they feel like he can't do his job, then they will come back out and get rid of him. But this is between him and the people of Pennsylvania now. Greg Price tweets out, John Fetterman chaired a subcommittee hearing today. Here is his opening statement.
I call to this hearing of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Food and Nutrition, Specialty Crops, Organics, and Research to order. Chairwoman Stabenow and Ranking Member Boozman, thank you so much for coming. I thank you for your leadership on this committee, and I look forward to working with you to pass a farm bill. A farm bill that works for small farmers, rural communities, and hungry Americans. I would also like to thank my ranking member, Senator Braun. And I look forward to working closely with you. SNAP is one of the most effective programs to fight hunger and poverty in the country. In my time and effort in IFAS, as the mayor of Braddock to lieutenant governor to now, I have heard from Pennsylvanians about their support for SNAP. Hunger is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's all of our issue that we have to take it on.
Dude. This is torture to listen to. Again, glad this guy's back in the Senate and back to work. But realistically, like, I don't believe that this is what this person wants. I don't even know if this is what John himself wrote. Or if this is what was handed in front of him and said, just say this. And make it sound convincing, John. Don't worry, we'll get you, we'll keep you your tenure here. Just say what's on the paper, John. Just say it. Don't worry about it, what it means. Just say it. I mean, this legitimately, and I got criticism for this back when I started my channel, when I was still using scripts and doing one-off videos. Before I started going live and pretty much saying what happens off the top of my head. And that is the fact that, I mean, when you sound like you're reading off a script, you are not convincing to anybody. It sounds, and again, I can go back to my old videos all the way back at the beginning of the channel and say that it sounded like this. I sounded like a kid in front of the class, gave me a report that I didn't want to give, and feeling embarrassed like I was in front of the class. And that is what I'm getting off of this. He doesn't want to be there, he doesn't want to give the speech, and he's just going through the motions. And he doesn't believe in anything that he's getting off of this, so. But he's chairing the committee now, so. Whatever that means for a person who doesn't have auditory communication skills. And with that, we're actually going to take that out for the rest of the day into the thing that I am thankful for. And it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag, especially given my feelings towards Democrat politicians in general. But I gotta say, honestly and fully, when it comes to people like Fetterman, when it comes to politicians who may or may not have been in a position where they could come back, I am thankful for the health of these people. Again, I have said horrible things about Mitch McConnell, and I make fun of the fact that he can only move half of his jaw every time I read a quote from him. Well, you see, we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can for the war effort. I mean the American people, and we can't do anything else other than support these Americans. I mean, he's a goofy fuck, and he's a warmonger, he's a war pig. I can't stand any policy that is crafted by Mitch McConnell except for the judiciary filibuster reform for the Supreme Court. He deserved that. He had that coming. He deserved to be able to come back and do that after what Harry Reid did to him with Bush appointees. He deserved to take that swing. And it worked out incredibly well for this country too, by the way. But again, I don't want to see any harm befall Mitch McConnell. In fact, I want to see him live out the rest of his term and then get punished by his voters. Fetterman, I want to see the same thing. Some of that even comes back down into my feelings on mental health and suicide prevention in totality. And you guys know how I feel about that. I've sat in this very chair, different studio, but in this very chair for 24 hours to interview people, have a good time, listen to some music, and raise awareness for suicide prevention in the midst of all of us being locked in our homes. And while I can't agree on any policy that is put forward by the people who are pulling John Fetterman's strings, he is a role model for that movement, and I'm glad that there is one out there. His policy positions aside, I'm glad that there's more awareness for this, and I'm glad that there are more people out there. I get so frustrated too, like going all the way back to the Montana transgender issue, where Zoe Zephyr is out there. You will have the blood of the children on your hands because they're all going to go en masse and kill themselves because you won't let them chop off their wieners or their boobs or anything else like that. As a person who has struggled with suicide myself and mental health, I can't begin to tell you how much that pisses me off. You better give us what we want or we're just going to go off and off ourselves. Oh, that pisses me off. Oh, that burns me up. In a way that I can't even begin to describe. That burns me up so. That cuts like deep down into my soul. In a way that I can't even begin to explain. And I do hope with some of these laws coming out of here, especially the Missouri one, I like the way that's structured because, you know, it is a bit of carrot and stick. If you've got the suicidal tendencies, then let's go and solve the suicidal tendencies before we pump you full of a bunch of hormones that are going to throw your emotions into an even further whack. So, I'm glad for the spotlight, I'm glad for the attention. And even with my experience, I hope that at some point my experience helps somebody else down the road who doesn't think that he's got a place to turn to look out to his family and say, I'm having a problem. Somebody needs to help me. I can't go to the doctors because they're just going to pump me full of a bunch of drugs. Trust me, after my experience with my second fiance, I cannot go on the drugs. I can't do it. And hopefully that person will have somebody that's there for them. And the other side is that I hope that the awareness is out there. That people need to check in on the people that they care about. One of the hardest parts for me when I was struggling, when I was going through everything, was the fact that, number one, I didn't feel... I couldn't open up to anybody. I couldn't go to anybody. Because I kind of knew at the point that I was at that most people would just try to force me into taking drugs to solve my problems. High-end narcotics to solve my problems. And most of the people who were in the position to make the decisions were into that camp. It was heavily suggested for me, in fact, that be the only solution for my problems. And it's not the solution that works for everybody. It really isn't. So, and one of the hardest parts, even this last time I was struggling with it, was the fact I stopped using Facebook entirely. I withdrew because, you know, there was just nothing there. I didn't go out, I didn't do anything, I couldn't be seen in public, and I couldn't even be on social media because I felt like I was just that much of a complete bother to everybody. Which leads into more horrifying thoughts, trust me. When you self-isolate and then you're stuck with your own thoughts, when you're in that mindset, you're not in a good place. And nobody was there to check on me, so I can come out and, you know, we can use Fetterman and his experience to shine the spotlight. And yes, even my disagreement with the way that these transgender kids are being spotlit. Hopefully it's enough to bring out the spotlight and say, hey, if you haven't heard from this person that you care about in a long time, check on him. Call him. Do something for him. Or her. Or yes, even Z, zer, zem, zay, zer, they, them, they, their. Check on these people. And that's one of the things that I'm thankful for this week. And with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. Where's our outro music? There it is. The Hot Crater Zone is a fun song, but we've got our own outro music for this. So, with that, we're out of here for the day. Thank you, everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. We had a busy live chat today, so I was glad to see that. We'll be back here tomorrow to look at some things that I like and some things that I hate, plus the news. We got through everything today, so we'll see what happens in the next 22 hours. I'm sure that we're going to have some debt ceiling talk. That is going to be front and center now. They're done trying to hide behind it. They're done trying to bring themselves up to the last minute with everything else, so that's going to be front and center. Because now the news media can come out and blame Republicans and be the captive propaganda team for the Biden admin. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll be back here tomorrow to talk about that. Plus, whatever else happens in these next 22 hours. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you guys here and hearing what it is you have to say. And I'm going to go do some reading on a House resolution, as was recommended to me. We will see you tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night. Be good. Have a good dinner. Enjoy your families. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.